You have just fired 6 rockets into the dark, and now you have maybe 90 seconds to live. The flash of those rockets lit up your exact position like a signal flare, and somewhere out there, an enemy radar has already traced the smoke trails backward, done the math, and started firing back at the patch of ground you are standing on right now. You are not in a tank. You are not even wearing the protection of armor. You are 3 people in the cab of a truck, and the only thing that is going to keep you alive is speed, fire, and run for your life. This is the HIMARS, the rocket launcher that became the most hunted weapon on the modern battlefield. And the life of the crew inside it comes down to a countdown clock every single time they pull the trigger. Here is what makes it so strange. The HIMARS is not some heavily armored monster. It is a wheeled truck, the same kind of 5-ton chassis that hauls cargo, with a single pod of rockets bolted on the back. It can throw those rockets more than 40 miles and swap in a missile that reaches nearly 200, hitting a target the size of a garage from that distance. It is one of the most feared weapons of the last decade. And yet the cab those 3 soldiers ride in offers them almost no protection at all, no thick armor, no way to shrug off a blast. The people who designed it made a deliberate, chilling trade. They gave it a devastating punch and almost nothing to survive the counterpunch, because the entire plan is to never be there when the counterpunch lands. So, how do 3 people fire one of the loudest, most visible weapons on Earth and live? And later, how the enemy slowly figured out a way to beat it. Let us get into it. And when I say 3 people, I mean 3. Not a big gun crew, not a platoon. A commander, a second-in-command, and a driver. That is it. Between them, they do everything: navigate to the firing position, receive the target, aim the launcher, fire, and drive for their lives. There is no one to hide behind and no one to share the load. Modern electronics do the aiming math in seconds, which is exactly why so few people can run such a powerful weapon. But it also means that when the return fire comes, there are only 3 human beings in that cab to feel it. It all revolves around a single tactic with a deceptively simple name: shoot and scoot. Watch the clock on it, because the whole job lives inside these numbers. The crew pulls into a firing position, sometimes one they scouted hours ago, sometimes just a gap in a tree line they picked on the way in. From the moment they stop, the launcher can be aimed and ready to fire in about 16 seconds. 16. Then, on the command, they let go. A full salvo of 6 rockets can be away in under a minute, each one screaming off the rail and lighting the whole position white. And the instant the last rocket is gone, they do not celebrate. They do not wait to confirm the hit. They run. The launcher drops flat, the truck slams into gear, and within about 2 minutes of firing, they are already moving, accelerating away at highway speed, because they know what is coming and understand what is racing toward them in those 90 seconds. Counter-battery fire is not a single shot. It is the enemy's own artillery firing back at the coordinates their radar just calculated, a rain of shells falling on the exact spot the crew fired from. If the truck is still there, it does not survive. This is why nobody lingers, why there is no such thing as just one more rocket, why the drills are hammered over and over until moving becomes pure reflex. The difference between a crew that respects the clock and one that hesitates for even 30 extra seconds can be the difference between driving home and simply never being found. Now stretch that out over weeks, and you start to understand what it does to a person. These crews work mostly at night, firing in the dark to stay hidden from the drones that hunt them from above. But even at night, there is no real hiding, because the rocket exhaust throws up a huge, telltale flare that announces exactly where they are for miles. so they can never fire twice from the same place. Every launch burns a position. Between missions, they do not roll back to a base. They slip into hide sites, tucked under trees and netting, reload their next pod of rockets from a separate supply truck, and then wait and watch. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and armed, grabbed in shifts in or beside the vehicle, always with someone listening, always ready to move in seconds if a drone hums overhead or an order comes to fire. There is no downtime in the way most people mean it. Even parked and hidden, the crew is simply a target that has not been found yet. Some of these launchers get delivered to the fight a different way entirely, flown in on a cargo plane to a rough airstrip deep in contested ground, handed their target coordinates sometimes while the plane is still in the air, firing within minutes of the wheels touching down, then either racing off into the dark or rolling straight back up the ramp and vanishing. It is the most elusive, high-tempo kind of warfare there is. And the people inside these trucks carry a very particular kind of exhaustion, the exhaustion of knowing you are the single most wanted target on the entire front every hour of every day. Nowhere did that become clearer than in Ukraine. When the first handful of these launchers arrived in the summer of 2022, they changed the war almost overnight, reaching out and destroying ammunition dumps, command posts, and supply hubs that had been safely out of range the day before. One of the very first crews described using it to strike a Russian headquarters that had been set up inside a school, a target they simply could not have reached before. Within weeks, videos of ammunition depots erupting in enormous secondary explosions became an almost daily sight. The weapon did not just destroy targets. It made the enemy afraid to gather anything, supplies or headquarters or artillery anywhere within its reach. The crews nicknamed the machine the most hunted weapon in all of Ukraine, and the hunt was real. But here's the number that stunned military analysts. Of the 36 launchers delivered over the following years, only 4 were ever confirmed destroyed. 4. An enemy threw everything it had at finding them, and the shoot and scoot cycle kept them alive anyway. For a while, the reason was almost embarrassingly simple. The other side just could not find them fast enough. Their eyes in the sky, their intelligence, could not close the gap between the launch and the escape, and that would have been a clean, triumphant story. Except war never leaves a weapon unbeaten for long, because the enemy adapted. If you cannot catch the truck, you go after the thing that makes its rockets deadly, the satellite signal that guides them to the target. So they flooded the front with electronic jamming, drowning out the GPS signal the rockets rely on. And it worked. By late 2023, rockets that once landed within a few feet of their aim point were drifting wide, missing buildings entirely in the most heavily jammed areas. One confidential assessment went as far as calling the once unstoppable HIMARS, in some places, completely ineffective. The wonder weapon of 2022 had, in barely 2 years, been partly neutralized, not by catching the crews, but by blinding their rockets. The American side did not just accept it. Engineers began racing new anti-jamming receivers onto the launchers, hardware built to hold onto the signal through the noise, buying hundreds of kits to retrofit the fleet. But the enemy gets a vote too, and every countermeasure invites a counter to the counter. The shoot and scoot truck still runs its 90-second gauntlet every time it fires. It is just that now there is a second war layered on top of the first one, an invisible fight in the electronic spectrum, on top of the one fought with rockets and radar. And maybe that is the thing to sit with. Strip away the technology, the ranges, the acronyms, and what you are left with is almost unbearably human. 3 people in the cab of a truck with no armor, in the dark, firing a weapon that screams their location to the entire world, and then betting their lives over and over that they can be gone before the answer arrives. No thick steel to hide behind. No second chance if the clock beats them, just speed, nerve, and a stopwatch counting down from 90. They are not the invincible superweapon the early headlines made them out to be, and they are not the useless relic the later jamming reports suggested either. They are something in between, a tiny crew doing one of the most dangerous jobs on the modern battlefield, living 90 seconds at a time. Fire and run. There is another one on screen if you are not done yet.